This video ends today when I clear Barcelona's massive debts. Barcelona has one of the best pools of young talent in world football right now. Players like Pedri, Gavi, and even youngster Lamine Yamal are going to be the future of this side, but they all have one thing in common. They all came through the youth setup at Masia, Barcelona's famed academy. But yet the club finds itself in billions of pounds worth of debt. So in today's video, I will only be using players from Masia to help power this club forward while clearing out Barcelona's monster debts. So some rules for this video: I will not be signing anyone in this video. We will be using any money that we make from player sales to help clear the debts. I will only be able to introduce new players into this team if they come through my youth intake, Masia players only. I will be able to renew contracts of certain players at the club if they are already at the club, but I will be looking to try and shift on the non-Masia talent. Obviously, I'm going to try and keep the likes of Gavi, Pedri, Yamal, etc. all at the club, but maybe some of the non-Spanish players we're going to maybe look at trying to move on. I have no idea how long this is going to take. Let me know down in the comments how many seasons you think it is going to take to get rid of Barcelona's almost £1 billion worth of debt. Diving into season 1, we know what this Barcelona team is all about. Lots of high-profile players on huge stacks of money, but also a nice smattering of younger talent. Key players I want to focus on during this video will be 19-year-old left-back Alejandro Balde, but his contract expires at the end of the season, so renewing that will be a priority number 1 this year. In midfield, we will be running Gavi and Pedri as our 2 central midfielders, and of course we will be playing wonder kid Lamine Yamal in the starting 11 from the start of this save. And also don't forget Ansu Fati, who is out on loan for season number 1. And believe me, once he returns from Brighton, he will not be going out on loan ever again. We need a tactic for this challenge, and I'll be rocking GYR's Master of Puppets to give it a run in the latest update. This is what the tactic looks like in-game, but we'll be pinning certain players into position for the season, with these 4 players being locked in. Looking at the club's finances, we're in a bit of a hole. The overall balance is in the red to the value of £22 million, and we have over £650 million worth of net debt. We've got 4 competitions to play in this season, and success on the field will help me clear this debt. Moving into the January transfer window in season number 1, and the clear out of Deadwood has begun when we made £90 million in this window. First up, defender Andreas Christensen joined Napoli for £19 million, and Sergio Roberto followed him out the door, joining Chelsea for £6.25 million. And the biggest outgoing of this window was Rafinha, who joined Manchester City for an initial £52 million, which could rise to £60 million with the add-ons. Somehow, these transfers did not make our financial situation any better, as we are now somehow £100 million in the red in terms of the overall club balance. Perhaps this might take longer than I thought it would. On the pitch, we had a pretty good season, but we are Barcelona. We dominated La Liga, winning the title with 104 points and a plus 98 goal difference. Robert Lewandowski won the league golden boot with 27 goals in 28 games, but sadly this is a player I'm gonna have to move on sooner rather than later. Whilst we were clear in the league, we were very much the bridesmaids and not the bride in all of the cups and knockout competitions this season. In the Supercopa, we dispatched Osasuna in the semi-finals, but lost the final in Saudi Arabia to Real Madrid on penalties. And sadly for us, it was a similar outcome in the Copa del Rey as well. We knocked out Deportivo, Eibar, Atletico Madrid and Athletic Bilbao before coming up against Real Madrid in the final. Despite playing against 10 men for a majority of the game after Luka Modric received a straight red card, Madrid still managed to get the win through goals from Antonio Rudiger and Vinicius Jr. And in the Champions League, we flew through Group H, but somehow managed to finish second behind Galatasaray. In the knockout stages, we were able to dispatch Manchester City, Arsenal and even Celtic in the semi-finals to set up a Champions League final against PSG. We took to the field knowing we'd either start a potential dynasty of our own or we are the team that PSG beat in their first Champions League win. Sadly for us, Vitinha opened the scoring inside 5 minutes and then added a second on the half-hour mark. Unfortunately for us, we were not really at the game at all. It seemed like it came a little bit too early for us, and PSG lifted the first Champions League trophy in their history. And as we're not signing any players this season, we're going to need to rely on our youth intake, which was average at best, with the best of the bunch being Ramon Gonzalez, who could develop into a player. In summer number 2, the clear out continued and we made £245 million without spending a penny. Firstly, Ilkay Gundogan departed to Saudi Arabia for £50 million, and he shared a flight with Robert Lewandowski, who joined Al Ittihad for an eye-watering £120 million. It's just a staggering amount for a 35-year-old. And to wrap up the window, Ferran Torres left the club to join Bayern Munich for £73 million. I was happy to move on some of the older members of the squad for larger fees, and I was more than happy to let Torres move on, with Ansu Fati returning from his loan and the pre-arranged signing of Vitor Roque. This season, we've promoted our first player from La Masia as right-back Hector Fort comes in to take a starting role at the club, aged just 18. We will be pinning Fort into the right-back spot along with Ansu Fati on the left wing and Vitor Roque up top. Competitions-wise, we have the same 4 competitions as last season, and despite winning the Liga to canter, Real Madrid are favourites to win La Liga this season. It probably has something to do with the fact that we are the youngest squad in the league by a considerable margin, with an average age of under 22.5. And before we start this season, let's take a look at the finances. After a positive summer making £245 million without spending a penny, the overall balance of the club is now back in the positives, but we still have a net debt of £154 million and £425 million in outstanding bank loans. There's still plenty work to be done here. Does anyone believe in deja vu? Because this season felt like almost a carbon copy of last year. The league was closer than last season, but we managed to edge out Real Madrid to the title, this time by 5 points, with Vitor Roque picking up the league's golden boot with 22 La Liga goals. In the Supercopa, we advanced past Celta Vigo this year before losing our heads in the final against Real Madrid. The game had 3 red cards in it, 2 for us and 1 for Madrid, but David Alaba bagged a brace in extra time to see us fail again in Saudi. In the Copa del Rey, we advanced past San Fernando, Getafe, Villarreal and Osasuna before coming up against you-know-who in the final. This time there was no red cards, but Madrid ran out winners yet again, with Galeno getting the deciding goal. And in the Champions League, you'll never guess what happened. We cruised through the league phase, finishing in 10th as one of the 4 teams that finished on 15 points. This meant that we had to play in the knockout playoff round, where we take on Ghent from Belgium. We won both games in this tie 3-0 to see us progress to the round of 16, where we would come up against, you guessed it, Real Madrid. The first leg was at the Camp Nou, where we put in yet another woeful performance against Madrid, losing the game 1-0, leaving us it all to do in the Bernabeu. Gavi stepped up in the second leg, opening the scoring and pulling us level, but in the second half, Galeno scored yet another important goal to see Madrid advance with a 2-1 aggregate win. So Season 2 was pretty much the same as Season 1, good in the league, but faltering in the cups. However, things were made a little bit better with our youth intake, as we had 2 elite talents coming through, including an Irishman, which really confused me. Moving into Season 3, I have to find the right balance between clearing out everyone at the club whilst trying to be successful on the pitch. We did, however, move on 3 more players, making us just under £40 million. Firstly, young defender Mika Faye left the club, joining Porto for an initial £4.6 million. Then Clement Lenglet joined Lyon for £15 million after barely playing following returning from his loan spell with Spurs. And finally, American fullback Serginho Dest departed for the Premier League, joining Leeds United for £19.25 million. With all this money coming in, we'd actually have a transfer budget of over £250 million that we wouldn't be touching, but our biggest thing financially would be the fact that we are now saving £1.2 million a week on our projected wage budget. On the field, we had to fill some of these squad holes with La Masia talent, so we now have 14 academy graduates in our first team squad. Going into the season, I'll be pinning Fort, Fati and Roque into position to make sure we are getting the best out of them, and to complete this trio up front, this is how Lamine Yamal is looking, and we all know he's only going to get better. We have the same 4 competitions as always, but we continue to be the second favourites for La Liga behind Real Madrid, but for some reason, the board only want me to qualify for the Champions League. In season number 3, everything just clicked, and we really started to take things to the next level. In La Liga, we managed to amass a total of 95 points, winning 30 of our 38 games. This meant that we secured our 3rd La Liga title in a row, beating Madrid to the title by 11 points. And in the domestic cup competitions this season, we finally got our own back on Real Madrid. First up was the Super Cup, where we hit them with a true FMing, scoring 3 goals after the 90th minute to lift the trophy for the first time in this save. And things did not stop there, as we fired our way through the field in the Copa del Rey and came up against Real Madrid in the final. Ansu Fati opened the scoring for us in the first half, but his goal was cancelled out by Fede Valverde on the stroke of half time. However, it wouldn't be a Clásico without a red card, and this time David Alaba saw red for Real Madrid. After that, we took charge of the tie, bagging another 3 goals to win 4-1 for a second time this season. And finally, in the Champions League, we blitzed through the league phase, topping the table with 21 points, sending us into the knockout stages, being the team that everyone wanted to avoid. This season, we avoided Madrid in the knockouts and dismantled Celtic, Chelsea and Liverpool on the way to the final, where we would take on Dortmund. We took to the field, and I was expecting this to be a cut and dry quadruple, but how wrong I was. Ansu Fati opening the scoring, but Markel Sabitzer tied up the game. In the second half, Fati fired home his 2nd of the game, but we gave away a penalty in the 89th minute, and Sebastian Haller held his nerve and tied the game for a second time. Extra time came and went, with neither side able to break the deadlock, meaning we would head to a penalty shootout. After scoring from the spot in the game, Sebastian Haller aimed for the same spot in the shootout, and ter Stegen was able to deny him this time. And the tie would be settled when Julian Brandt,
Julian Brandt! Yeah!
stepped up to keep Dortmund in the shootout, but lashed his penalty off the underside of the bar to see us lift our first Champions League trophy of this challenge. Transfers would be key for this challenge, but ultimately so would Champions League success to get that money back into the club's coffers. This season, our youth intake produced yet another elite tier talent, this time in fullback come winger Telmo, but he seems a few seasons away at least. Looking at the finances at the end of the season, we now have £340 million in the club balance and almost £300 million in transfer budget, but we still have £288 million in outstanding loans, and I'm quickly running out of players that I can sell. This summer window was all about keeping hold of the players that I did have, as I didn't want to make this squad any weaker after bagging our first Champions League. Players wise, we're looking as good as ever, with 8 players in the squad that have a 4-star rating or higher, with the best one of those being 19-year-old Lamine Yamal, who got 58 goal contributions last season in 54 appearances. And as last season's Champions League winners, we add the UEFA Super Cup to our schedule for the 2026-2027 season, and domestically, we are favourites to win La Liga with the youngest squad in the division. We kicked off the season with the UEFA Super Cup, where we took on Europa League winners Nice and bagged our 7th trophy of this save, thanks to this first half goal from Vitor Roque. Our dominance of La Liga continued this season as we went on an unbeaten run that spanned 28 matches and ran from August through to March. It will come as no surprise that we won our 4th La Liga title, bagging a total of 97 points, but this team was not finished there. In the middle of our unbeaten run, we took the annual trip to Saudi Arabia for the Supercopa, where we'd end up taking on Real Madrid as always in the final. Lamine Yamal opened the scoring, only to see his strike cancelled out by Rodrigo. However, in the second half, Vitor Roque popped up with another trophy-winning goal. Sadly for us, Real extracted their revenge in the Copa del Rey, taking us out at the semi-final stage after a goal at the Bernabeu from Vinny. But the true financial revenue from winning games in this save comes from the Champions League. Yet again, we coasted through the Champions League phase, finishing 3rd in the table and going straight into the round of 16, and this is where things got special. We managed to progress past PSV, followed by Chelsea and Manchester City, only conceding 1 goal in all 6 knockout ties to set up a final against Arsenal. This would be our second successive Champions League final, and it would take a set piece from Ronald Araujo to secure a 7th Champions League in the club's history. But I have to say that only conceding 1 goal in the knockout stages of a Champions League is next level. Looking at our youth intake this season, we have a good crop of youngsters coming through with 1 elite talent and 3 top talents. And some of this new gen talent is making its way into our first team, as Enric Alcina made 20 appearances for the club this season in all competitions, netting 8 goals and providing 3 assists. But we're here to clear the debt of the club, and we now have a balance of over 500 million stashed away for a rainy day, but they seem reluctant to pay off the outstanding 233 million of bank loans that they still have. This summer we added 1 outgoing from the squad as Albert Navarro left the club to join Al Shabab for £11 million, which sadly isn't going to put a dent in our mountain of debt. No changes to the best 11 that have been together for years now and are ready to rock and roll for the season. We've got the same 5 trophies on offer this season, and I'll be looking to join a steam company in the Champions League by three-peating the competition. This is a feat that only has ever been achieved 3 times in history. The 1970 to 1973 Ajax squad, the 1974 to 1976 Bayern Munich side, and of course more recently, the 2015 to 2018 Real Madrid side. But we're not going to talk about the 5 times that Madrid won it in a row back in the 50s. So for season number 5, I'm not going to beat around the bush. We are a footballing dynasty at this stage because we just won everything on offer. We opened the season dismantling AC Milan in the UEFA Super Cup, with Lamine Yamal putting on a show, bagging an impressive hat-trick. La Liga was under wraps from the get-go, and we won the title by 8 points. We secured the Super Copa on penalties as Nico Gonzalez blasted his penalty for Madrid off target, and Wonderkid Endrick saw his penalty stopped by Ter Stegen. And this season we avoided Real in the Copa del Rey, coming up against Celta Vigo in the final, who we smashed 5-0 without ever really getting out of second gear. The major test was in the Champions League this season, trying to win that for a 3rd time in a row. The league phase was pretty straightforward, with us finishing in 3rd in the table with 19 points, meaning we go straight into the round of 16. It was Real Madrid in our way, and despite the boys losing 3-1 at the Bernabeu, we battled back at home and truly battered Madrid, but the game ended up being decided by penalties. Penalties were flying in non-stop, but I saw something in this shootout that I had never seen before. Poor Adrien Rabiot saw his first penalty in the shootout saved by Ter Stegen, but unfortunately for him, we managed to get all the way back round to him again in the shootout. This time he went in a different direction, but the result was the same, as Ter Stegen saved his 2nd penalty in the shootout to see us win 11-10. The quarterfinals were less eventful as we drew away in Paris to PSG, who now have Jude Bellingham, but beat them back at the Camp Nou. Into the semi-finals we went, where we faced Manchester United, who we dismantled at Old Trafford, before strolling to a comfortable win at home to win the tie 5-1. This set up the opportunity to make history, and we'd come up against Bayern Munich in the Champions League final. The game was very end-to-end, with 5 goals being shared between the teams, but Lamine Yamal's brace was the deciding factor to see us lift our 3rd Champions League title in a row. So we managed to make history this season, but our youth intake was poor for a club of this size, and I'm very skeptical that any of these players will ever make it into our starting 11. However, looking at the finances, we managed to clear 1 of the 2 remaining bank loans, so we now just have 164 million left to clear before we could start spending at this club, which would be great fun, as this summer I have a transfer budget of 476 million. This summer was another of little outgoings at the club, as I cannot really afford to lose any more players at this point, but Irish new gen Billy Wolf will head to Blackburn on loan for the season. But talent-wise, this squad is still stacked beyond belief. We're odds-on favourites for another La Liga title, still with the youngest squad in the league, but now our average age of the squad is 24.64. So basically, everyone's entering their prime. It's actually quite funny how good this team is, because I've kind of just sat here and not really done anything. I've plugged a good tactic into Barcelona with all of the plethora of good players that they've got, and it's just staggering how good this team could be. We opened Season 6 with the UEFA Super Cup, where we took on Aston Villa, but in all honesty, this wasn't a close game as we ran out 3-1 winners. The Super Copa saw us take out both teams from Madrid as we knocked out Atleti in the semi-finals before beating Real in the final with goals from Yamal and Roque. We retained the Copa del Rey for a second season, this time dispatching Real Madrid in the semis before coming from behind in the final against Atletico, with new gen and La Masia product Ramon Gonzalez netting the all-important goals. La Liga was closer than I would have liked this season as Real pushed us all the way, but we managed to hold our nerve, winning the title on the final day of the season with a 1-0 away win at Real Betis. We finished the season on 95 points in the end, but that marks our 6th La Liga title in a row in this save and a 7th in a row in total, a feat that has never ever been done before in Spain. However, we are bidding to go into an exclusive group in the Champions League in terms of teams that have won the competition 4 seasons in a row. In the league phase, we actually suffered defeats against Arsenal and Dortmund to see us finishing 11th in the table and actually have to go into the playoff round. But knockout football is where this team comes alive, especially at the Camp Nou. We recovered from a first leg loss to knock out Ajax before beating Juve 6-2 on aggregate in the round of 16. In the quarterfinals, we had an unlikely opponent in Everton, but progressed with a 6-5 aggregate win, but Dominic Calvert-Lewin did cause us some problems. The semi-saw us dispatch Bundesliga side RB Leipzig without conceding a goal, which set up another final appearance, this time against Arsenal. It would be a repeat of the 2026-27 final, which we actually won 1-0. There were lots more goals in this one, but sadly for you Gunners out there, the outcome was the same. Vitor Roque bagged an outstanding hat-trick to see us lift our 4th Champions League trophy in a row. And shout out to Roque, who really had a breakout season this year, bagging a 40-goal season to be the club's top goal scorer. Our youth intake for Season 6 wasn't too bad either, but it seems like Barcelona can only produce forwards, as best prospect Jan Marino is yet another striker. We still have 112 million remaining in our last bank loan, but our overall bank balance is now over $750 million. I just don't get why they just don't pay it off. I was starting to get a little bit frustrated with the club having all this money in the bank balance, but not actually paying off the debt. So I decided to get active in the transfer market yet again to see if I could force their hand. This summer, we made a total of 112 million on transfers and allowed some big names to move on. First up, Frankie de Jong swapped Barcelona for Newcastle, joining the Magpies for 47.5 million, with Marc Bernal primed to take his spot in our midfield. He was followed out the door by Eric Garcia, who also went to the Premier League as he joined Manchester United for an initial £46 million, as Billy Wolf is back from his loan and ready to fill that spot in our defence. Eman Cosbo also departed, joining Bayern Leverkusen for £10.75 million, and reserve goalkeeper Inaki Peña joined Monaco for £6 million. We now have 7 La Masia players in our starting 11, with a total of 18 in our first team squad. Competitions-wise, we have the same 5 trophies on offer yet again, but this season we will be trying to equal Real Madrid's record of winning the Champions League 5 seasons in a row. Can it be done? I guess there's only one way to find out. Before we get into the matches, we have a huge transfer to update you on. PSG came calling and signed Pedri for £200 million. Now, I love Pedri, but that was a figure I just couldn't say no to. We also sold Paul Prim, Fermin and Mark Guay for £20 million as well. I guess every little helps at this stage. We started as always with the UEFA Super Cup, where this year we took on Inter Milan, and the outcome of the game was the same, with us restricting Inter to 1 off-target shot in the whole game. In the Super Copa, we dismantled Villarreal 5-1 in the semi-final before taking out Real Madrid in the final, with new gen Ramon Gonzalez netting the all-important second goal. In the Copa del Rey, day, we progressed through the rounds pretty comfortably, even beating Celta Vigo 7-2 on aggregate in the semi-finals to set up yet another final with Madrid. This one was more comfortable than the Super Copa, with Noah Darvic, Lamine Yamal and Hector Fort hitting the back of the net on the way to a 3-1 win. And we completed the domination of Spain with a 91-point haul in La Liga, pipping Real to the title by just 2 points this season. But this was our 7th league title in a row in this save. Lamine Yamal continues to be exceptional, providing 60 goal contributions in 54 appearances this season, and looking at his attributes, he is just disgusting. And now for the Champions League. Could we make it 5 UCL trophies in a row? Well, we started with a flawless league phase, winning all of our games and topping the table with 24 points, going straight into the knockout stages. In the round of 16, we squeaked past Aston Villa on penalties before easing past Nice and then Arsenal to advance to the final yet again. It was if it was written as the final this season would be in the Camp Nou, and we would take on Bayern Munich for a second time in 3 seasons. We were all over Bayern in this game, but it was Ansu Fati who broke the deadlock with the only goal of the game in the 83rd minute to see us lift Champions League number 5 and equal Real Madrid's record. So this was our 3rd quintuple in a row and our 25th trophy in 7 seasons. But the board still refused to clear this £61 million worth of a bank loan. So I guess we're going to have to keep going, even though we have over £1 billion, yes, billion with a B, in our bank balance. Going into season number 8, I had a massive problem and a little bit of a flaw with this save concept. Andre ter Stegen retired at the end of last season, leaving a massive hole in this team as we've not really had a goalkeeper come through the ranks yet. So new gen Alfred Cornella will be the man in between the sticks this season, and I'm not exactly holding my breath. As per the rules, I couldn't sign anyone until the debt was gone, so I just have to let it ride. No one else departed the club this season for a fee, so let's just jump into the season. The January transfer window prompted some more player sales as we had several unhappy players, so I somehow managed to create an extra £81 million to come into the club. First, Noah Darvic left the club for Saudi Arabia for a fee of £35 million. Next, new-gen Jan Marino left the club for Chelsea for £10 million, and you can see when you look at his attributes why he's just not going to get into this team. And finally, English new-gen Matt Bloxham left the club to join Newcastle for another £35 million. This guy is good, but when you play in the same position as Ansu Fati in this team, you're just not going to start any games. On the field with our young goalkeeper in net, things were much closer this year, but he still managed to win us the UEFA Super Cup. After the game finished 3-3, Cornella stepped up in the shootout, saving penalties from both Bruno Guimaraes and Rooney Bargi. In the Super Copa, we secured the trophy yet again, beating Valencia in the semi-final before beating Real 2-1 in the final with goals from Victor Roque and new-gen Oscar Carreras. We did, however, avoid Real in the Copa del Rey this season, blasting our way through to the final, where we dismantled the other side from Madrid 6-1, with all 5 of our goal scorers coming through La Masia. In La Liga, we made it title number 8 with a 100-point season and a plus 100 goal difference, beating Madrid to the title by 17 points. This allowed us to prioritise the Champions League towards the end of the season, with us attempting to become the only team in history to win 6 Champions Leagues in a row. Our league phase was comfortable as we won 7 of our 8 games, losing the other one on the road to PSG. We still managed to finish top of the table and qualify for the round of 16, where we would face Atletico Madrid. Things didn't go all to plan in the knockout stages as we lost the first leg at the Metropolitano 4-3. However, back at the Camp Nou, goals from Vitor Roque and Ansu Fati were able to put us into the quarterfinals, where we once again took on familiar foes in Arsenal. We drew the game at home 0-0, leaving us it all to do at the Emirates. Ansu Fati put us in front on the night, only for Saliba to level for Arsenal. It looked like the Gunners had won the tie, scoring in the 94th minute, but new-gen Ramon Gonzalez was able to come up clutch and fire home 60 seconds later to send the game into extra time. These two teams were inseparable, and the tie would then be settled via penalty shootout. Fati saw his penalty saved by Aaron Ramsdale, but in the same round of penalties, penalties, Kai Havertz blasted his penalty off target. Both teams continued to score until young Alfred Cornella was able to save Musa Ndai's penalty to send us into the semi-finals. I thought normal service had resumed here as we pasted PSG in the Camp Nou, with Gavi bagging a brace along with goals from Yamal and Ansu Fati. However, we were handed a little bit of a scare in Paris as PSG, driven along by Jude Bellingham, scored 3 goals but couldn't find that all-important fourth to send the tie to extra time. This would set up our 7th Champions League final in this save and our 6th in a row, with a chance to make history. And who else would we face here but Bayern Munich? The deadlock wouldn't be broken until the second half, when new-gen Enric Alcina fired home this lovely long-range strike. Sadly for us, Bayern managed to find an equaliser in the 89th minute as they scored their only shot on target in the whole game. We've all been here, right? But the boys wouldn't be deterred, and Vitor Roque restored our lead in extra time, applying the finish to a bit of pinball in the penalty area. That was enough to see us lift the Champions League trophy and make history, securing 6 UCLs in a row. And days later, after the final, I finally got the message from Joan Laporta that we have cleared all of our outstanding debts and the club is now debt-free. We have over £1 billion in the bank still, and over 800 million in the transfer budget. And if you want to take over the save from right now, it's in my Patreon. And if you do like content like this, check out the playlist that's about to pop up right here, right now.